Trump says Iran's leaders remain strong and proud, making a breakthrough agreement far more difficult than expected. After months of negotiations and a fragile ceasefire, Trump acknowledged that Washington still has not secured a deal with Tehran. In a rare admission, Trump attributed the diplomatic deadlock to Iran's resolve rather than a lack of American pressure. Negotiations remain stalled as Tehran seeks access to frozen assets and sanctions relief, while Washington remains reluctant to concede. The diplomatic impasse comes amid renewed military exchanges around the Strait of Hormuz, further complicating efforts to secure a lasting truce. With tensions still simmering, Trump revealed why Washington remains unable to secure a lasting agreement with Tehran. The US president acknowledged that months of diplomacy and military pressure have yet to produce a breakthrough. Trump argued that Iran's leadership remains resistant to compromise, making negotiations particularly difficult. Even so, Trump expressed confidence that Tehran will ultimately return to the negotiating table. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "They're strong, they're proud. There are things they never thought they'd be doing that they're going to have to do. They've got no choice, and it takes a little while." Unquote. The remarks came as American warplanes hit Iranian positions once again, testing an already shaky US-Iran truce. Iran's IRGC has claimed responsibility for the latest attacks on Kuwait and Bahrain. The IRGC said it targeted US military bases in the two Gulf states, according to Times of Israel. Iran said the attack was retaliation for US strikes on its radar sites earlier in the night. IRGC statement said, and I quote, "At 1:30 this morning, for offending tankers, with the instigation and guidance of the US aggressor army, without coordination and without paying attention to the warnings of the IRGC Navy, intended to leave the Strait of Hormuz illegally." Following this incident, at 2 o'clock, American drones hit a telecommunications tower in Keshem and a mast in Sirak with 2 projectiles. In response to the aggression of the American child-killing army, 2 American air bases in Kuwait named Ali al-Salem and the remaining important facilities of the 5th Fleet of the American Navy in Bahrain were immediately targeted by IRGC Aerospace Force ballistic missiles. "We warn the aggressor and child-killer enemy that if these evils are repeated, a limited response will not suffice. You will be responsible for the consequences of the complete closure of the Strait of Hormuz on the exit of your oil and gas." Unquote. Meanwhile, the US military appears to be trying to contain the fallout, saying Iran launched 7 ballistic missiles. US officials said the missiles were fired toward Kuwait and Bahrain, according to Times of Israel. The missiles were launched hours after the US said it had thwarted 4 Iranian one-way attack drones. US Central Command statement said, and I quote, "US forces intercepted multiple Iranian ballistic missiles and drones launched by Iran toward the Strait of Hormuz and Gulf neighbors, June 5. Iran fired 7 ballistic missiles toward Kuwait and Bahrain hours after US Central Command CENTCOM shot down 4 Iranian one-way attack drones that were launched toward the Strait of Hormuz. The attack drones posed an immediate threat to regional maritime traffic. US forces subsequently struck Iranian coastal surveillance radar sites in Gorak and on Keshem Island to defend against further maritime attacks. Initial assessments indicate 6 of the missiles launched by Iran were intercepted and a 7th did not reach its intended target. There are currently no reports of harm to US personnel, and Iranian claims of damaging US 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain are false. CENTCOM forces remain vigilant and postured to continue responding to unwarranted Iranian aggression in self-defense. Unquote. The IRGC claimed the latest strike after a former commander warned of a wider conflict. Donald Trump reportedly told senior aides he would end the ceasefire only if Iran was responsible for killing US troops. Trump privately indicated that the death of US personnel could trigger a return to direct military action. The position suggested he was prepared to tolerate limited clashes rather than risk a broader regional escalation. The latest tensions followed some of the most intense exchanges of fire since the truce first took effect. US officials told the Wall Street Journal that repeated Iranian attacks had significantly increased pressure on Trump. Officials also warned the attacks had raised fresh concerns about the long-term survival of the ceasefire. The Wall Street Journal reported that Trump continued to believe an agreement with Tehran remained achievable despite tensions. However, the report said Trump showed little urgency to finalize a comprehensive agreement with Tehran. Trump told the Wall Street Journal it remained possible the U.S. blockade of Iran could continue until Labor Day. The administration was reportedly working on a 60-day framework to guide future negotiations with Iran. The Wall Street Journal said Trump rejected Iran's latest offer and demanded additional concessions from Tehran. He reportedly insisted Iran must make significant concessions before receiving any sanctions relief. Iran maintained that nuclear negotiations could advance only after meaningful financial relief was provided. Tehran continued to seek access to frozen assets as part of any future understanding with Washington.
Because we took a strong action for a different reason, so they were reciprocating it.
Mr. President, can you explain why...
The negotiation itself has gone very well, actually. Very well.
Mr. President...
It could happen, I mean, if it happens, and it might not happen, who knows? But if it happens, it could happen like over the weekend. But as it stands now, we will go in sometime in the not too distant future. It's very safe down there. You know, we have, with Space Force, we have cameras. Every angle of those 3 sites are being watched at all times. If anybody went there, we'll see exactly what's happening, and we'll blow it up a little bit further. But as far as getting it, the B-2 bombers did a job like nobody's ever seen. In the night, with no moon, dead darkness, at 1 o'clock in the morning or so, they dropped those bombs, the biggest, just about as big a bomb as you can ever find, and it went down air chutes. It was hard to believe that they can do the technology. It followed a beam right into the air chutes, exploded. Very hard to get that material, but I still nevertheless want it. And I don't want to do it if we're in conflict. I don't want to put men in that kind of danger. I remember Jimmy Carter had some bad problems in Iran with the hostages. I don't want to ever put our people in that kind of danger. But when it's over, as of this moment, it's agreed that we will go in with them. We will get it, and we will destroy it. It will be destroyed.
The Iranian Navy says that on June 3rd it targeted the command and control systems aboard a U.S. destroyer, striking at what it describes as the ship's brain in Gulf waters. Tehran insists the strike was a direct response to what it calls aggressive U.S. measures against Iranian commercial shipping, accusing Washington of harassment at sea. This development was announced in an official statement issued by Iran's Army Public Relations Office, giving the claim the stamp of formal military approval. According to that statement, the U.S. destroyer was attempting to enter Iranian waters, a move Tehran frames as a clear violation of its sovereignty and red lines. However, U.S. Central Command has flatly denied Iran's account, rejecting the claim that any U.S. Navy destroyer was hit or successfully targeted. CENTCOM went so far as to say Iran is lying, insisting that American assets at sea are operating freely and without damage despite Tehran's statements. Iran's statement said, and I quote, "A few hours ago, following aggressive actions, violations of the regulations governing the Strait of Hormuz, and hostile acts against Iranian commercial vessels in the Sea of Oman, by the terrorist and aggressive U.S. military, the Navy, immediately upon detecting and identifying the source of those actions, targeted the command and control center responsible for them." End quote. Donald Trump said Iran still retains about 21% to 22% of its missile arsenal despite months of U.S. military strikes. The U.S. president made the remarks during an interview with NBC News on June 5. Trump claimed that most of Iran's missile factories, drone production facilities, and launch infrastructure had been destroyed. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "Most of the drone factories have been knocked out. Most of the launching pads have been knocked out, and most of the missile manufacturing areas have been knocked out. But they still have capacity. They have some missiles, they have some drones. I would say percentage-wise, maybe 21% to 22% of their missiles. It's a lot of missiles, but it's not what it was when we first attacked." Unquote. NBC noted that Trump's latest estimate was slightly higher than the roughly 18% figure he publicly cited in May. Despite those losses, Trump acknowledged that Iran still retained a meaningful missile and drone strike capability. Trump's remarks came as Iran continued demonstrating an ability to launch fresh missile and drone operations. Earlier, Kuwait claimed it intercepted 30 ballistic missiles and drones launched by Iranian forces. Iran's military also claimed it fired warning missiles toward US destroyers operating in the Gulf of Oman. Later, Iran launched multiple drones toward the Strait of Hormuz amid another period of regional tensions. CENTCOM said US forces shot down at least 4 drones before they were able to reach their intended targets. Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz disrupted one of the world's most critical energy corridors, sending shockwaves through global markets. The disruption triggered a surge in oil prices and fuel costs, adding to economic pressures in the United States and beyond. The resulting economic strain increased pressure on the Trump administration to find a diplomatic off-ramp and stabilize energy markets.